Welcome to the Well Woman Show, where we interview women executives, leaders, and entrepreneurs.
And you're listening to the Well Woman Show,
where motivated women achieve fulfillment and well-being.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show.
Take time for myself by coming to things like Well Woman drinks.
To be accepting of myself no matter what. Step away from judgment as much as possible.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show.
You're going to be in for a good ride. I don't regret anything. Everything I've ever done, I've learned from it, one way or another, good or bad.
Being a little bit selfish for yourself, put your own oxygen mask on first and then give what's left.
I'm a woman. I would prefer to tell my own story. My story, though it's very personal, is universal.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show. And now your host, Giovanna Rossi.
Hi, Giovanna Rossi here, and welcome to another episode of the Well Woman Show, where I interview women leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs about their lives and their road to becoming and being who they are today. Are you at the top of your game professionally but feeling burned out, or finding it hard to focus on your goals, or unfulfilled personally? Or are you in transition, simply juggling so many things you find it hard to take care of your own needs? Well, you're not alone. We all need to activate the 4 universal superpowers. These are the internal strengths and abilities we all already have but don't use all the time. Superpowers can be cultivated, and they include awareness, intuition, action, and acceptance. Toward the end of the show, in a segment called Superpowers for Success, I ask my guest about her superpowers, and the answers will give you the strength, perspective, and power to live a well woman life. I'm so happy you're here, so thanks for tuning in. This episode of the Well Woman Show is brought to you by Collective Action Strategies, supporting organizations that support women and families, and by Well Woman Life Movement Challenge Quiz, your resource for living your best life. If you're in burnout or major transition, this is your time to figure out what's holding you back from making the changes you need to make in order to live your fullest, most joyful life. The cause of all of our challenges, personal or professional, can actually be rooted in the lack of internal superpowers and or external supports. Our Well Woman Life framework tells you which stage of the Well Woman life cycle you're in and what to do about it so you can truly live your best life. You can find out more at wellwomanlife.com/quiz. I'm so thankful for support from Natural Awakenings magazine in New Mexico, a monthly green, healthy lifestyle publication, and for support from High Desert Yoga, promoting optimum physical health, clarity of mind, and spiritual inspiration for all. Today's topic is the importance of the everyday superhero, and hopefully by the end of the show, you'll be inspired to see your everyday strengths as superpowers that you can use to live your best life. My guest today is published author Kristine Kibbee. Kristine is a Pacific Northwest writer with an affection for all things literary. Kristine's passion for creative writing began in her early youth and led her to the doors of Washington State University, where she studied in the professional writing program. Kristine followed her scholarly pursuit of writing by publishing works in numerous magazines and literary reviews, as well as publishing several novels. What you'll learn in this episode is the importance of the everyday heroine in young adult fantasy literature, the original purpose behind telling fairy tales and their relation to fae lore, and insight into the current dynamics of the publishing world and how they affect women writers. So you definitely don't want to miss this. It's an awesome conversation. You can find more information and links as well as this week's giveaway at wellwomanlife.com/121show. And I'd love to hear from you if you listen to this show every week, or if you are new to the show. I'd love to see you in the Facebook group, wellwomanlife.com/Facebook. And it's really in there that we can talk openly about, our challenges and reflect and respond to the content of the podcast. So would love to see you there, wellwomanlife.com/Facebook. And very exciting news, save the date, September 9th for the Well Woman Life Retreat in New Mexico. We have a beautiful location. You are going to love it. And this is combined with the September 10th Leadership Summit. So it's a 2-day deal, and we're going to have info out about this soon, but definitely save the date. And if you want to be on the list to get the information about this right away, just email us, info@wellwomanlife.com. And we'll make sure you're on the list to get the information about the retreat and the leadership summit. And you can always visit wellwomanlife.com/events for more information about all things Well Woman. I'm super excited because I'm about to take off with my kiddos to Washington, D.C. We are headed out to the East Coast for, I'm speaking at a conference on work and life. Work and life. It's the what is it called? Work and Family Research Network. It's their annual conference in Washington, D.C., and it brings a ton of national and international folks together who are all working on work and family issues. That's one of my favorite topics. If you didn't know this about me already, I love talking about work-life balance and what we as individuals and in the community and at the policy level can do to improve the lives of women and families as it relates to sort of juggling their personal life and their professional life. So anyway, we're taking off to that. And so I have their little suitcases out. We're getting packed. I'm taking the kids with me because my husband has a conference at the exact same time somewhere else. So, and he usually is the one that stays with the kids when I run off to all these things all over the world. So this time I'm taking the kids with me so he can go to his conference. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to do the Smithsonian's and just have a hoot in DC. And then we're going to jet up to New York as well. So I'll be sort of in and out of communication on a daily basis, I guess, with all the travel, but we'll definitely be producing the show for you, so that'll come out every week. Without further ado, here is the interview with Kristine Kibbee. Welcome to the program, Kristine.
Thank you, ma'am.
Kristine, you are a writer, and we heard in the introduction a little bit about your background. Can you tell me what you're working on and how it impacts women and girls?
Sure. Right now, what I'm working on and what's most recently been released is a young adult fantasy trilogy. Kind of surrounds these two girls who wander across an abandoned town, and in trying to investigate what exactly has happened to the townspeople that disappeared there over a century ago, they wander upon this kind of den of these evil changeling fairies, and adventure ensues from there, as you might imagine. But specifically, I kind of set out with this particular series to cast an everyday heroine. And that's kind of how I think it relates back to the current climate of women's issues, in that, I don't know, there's just a lot of fantasy out there right now that is promoting these, what I feel are kind of unachievable images of women. I don't have any friends that have a magic lasso. I don't know anyone who's been saved by a sparkly vampire. I just know a lot of everyday people that really can make it work if they have stick-to-itiveness. And that's kind of how I tried to set up my heroine and her best friend in this series, is to present readers with a couple of gals that are just ordinary, everyday gals, but with pluck and determination and the fierceness of their friendship, they kind of make it through all these trials, not because they're magical or they're, have some kind of ancestry that links them to a radioactive spider and they have powers and whatnot. They're just normal girls who really are dedicated to making it work. And I think that needs to be presented more in young adult literature.
Yeah, so you think that it's actually doing a disservice for young women to only hear about heroines that have sort of superhuman powers?
Right, because I mean, I'd like to be able to present something that's achievable. I mean, I love fantasy. Don't get me wrong. I'm a fantasy buff. I love to go off into the yonder and just imagine all these fantastical things. But at the same time, it's nice to be able to identify more closely with someone. I mean, just hurrah for Wonder Woman and all that great stuff, and I think that promotes a lot of empowerment. But even when I see and read these things, I'm presented with women that I think I could never be that. I could never achieve that because I don't have those powers, I don't have those capabilities. So I just wanted to give girls a heroine that they could see themselves in realistically.
Well, that's so interesting because I talk a lot about superpowers on the Well Woman show, and to me, superpowers are things that we all have access to all the time, but we just don't necessarily activate them or use them. And so, it's not having magical bracelets or a lasso of truth, although I would love to have a lasso of truth.
I also get it too. Get me one of those if you're getting them.
Yeah. But the superpowers I talk about are much more about sort of internal, things that we can cultivate, like deep awareness and intuition and ability to take action when we need to, and those kinds of things.
Right. And I think that's, there are a couple situations that come to mind specifically in the book where my heroine is put into situations where she does kind of have to pull on that inner fortitude and be different from other people. Everybody who's going on, there's one scene I know where her kind of cooler cousin is trying to goad her into drinking and all the other kids are doing it. And it's just, she really has to stay true to herself. And I think that in and of itself, like you said, is a superpower. We have capabilities to achieve. And of course, just resisting the lure of alcohol is not an amazing achievement, though for some it is. But I mean, she does amazing things in the book, just pulling on her own capacities, that she is, like you say, cultivating and drawing from her own self.
Okay. And you also talk about sort of the original purpose behind telling fairy tales. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that's very compelling to me because I've always been fascinated by fairy lore, but I don't identify with kind of, I guess I would call it like the Hollywood version of a fairy. When I think of fairies, I don't think of Tinkerbell and I don't think of pixie dust and cute little things that, are appearing as alongside a fairy godmother. I was always drawn to the kind of darker original fae lore of the grim tales and all that business. I mean, because originally fairy tales really were crafted as a way, to keep children out of the woods, because back in the day, there were real dangers there to be had. And so these tales were crafted because a child could go out into the woods and lose their life ultimately. And granted, it wasn't because the woods were teeming with changelings, but these were crafted tales to really keep kids safe. And I kind of miss that throwback era of these dark kind of bestial fairies. And also to me, it has another layer of meaning of the wildness. I mean, we're so homogenized that I feel like we've kind of forgotten about the wildness of the wild because in essence, we've kind of tamed it and it doesn't scare us as much anymore because we've always got a GPS or a park guide or something to get us back home. But I wanted to draw back to that original, very bestial, wild image of a fairy and kind of cultivate that in this series, which is what I hopefully did.
Okay. And how important is it to you to have, these realistic kind of role models, right? For young readers, for your young readers?
For me, it is very important. I guess I just feel like I said, I feel like the women and girls that are out there reading these things, I want them to identify and I want them to feel empowered by what they have at their disposal. Not, that I need something else, that I need, like you said, a magical bracelet or whatever to enhance me to a point where I can achieve things because it's really in me. And because they're never going to wander across that stuff. As fantastical as my mind can get and as far as my imagination can go, I don't think any one of the girls reading my book is going to, like I said, get rescued by a sparkly vampire or anything of that nature. So just to know that she can be who she is, and that is and make herself better and make herself achieve amazing things without some external force giving her a power, to me, is very important.
Yeah, wow, that's so in line with what I talk about on my show. So it's like we've got a similar message, but delivering it in different ways. Like you're writing these books, and have you heard back from young adults, young women, about the impact of your books on them?
Yes and no. I mean, I love connecting with fans. I mean, it's the biggest high for me that to have someone. And I actually recently had a gal who did a blog, and she pulled her 10-year-old daughter in with it, who had read the book and had some very positive messages to share. And, I think short of standing next to one and saying, did you feel empowered by it? It's hard to get that specific feedback. But, I have gotten loads of positivity about people getting passionate about it. And I think that's when they identify really strongly with the character and they move with her and feel with her. I think that kind of shows them, by part and parcel, that they are connecting and they are getting that message because they do identify so much with her because she is a real everyday girl.
Mm. And so personally for you as the author of these books, are the characters reflective of you and your life?
I was asked something similar to that recently, and they really aren't. I didn't draw on a specific friendship or anything like that to craft these girls because my characters are very organic. They kind of do their own thing. These girls evolved, like as much as I want to empower girls, I want to empower my characters, I guess, I guess this comes from someone who has imaginary friends speaking, but my characters, a lot of times I'll make a rough outline and then let my characters take the story. And as these girls became themselves and then they evolved as themselves, they kind of took the reins of the story, and they weren't some, ghost of a memory that I had or replicating some experience that I had, because they took the reins and they drove the story. They're very much their own girls, very much their own people.
Mm. Okay, and you actually came to be a writer in a pretty traditional way, it looks like, but maybe you can elaborate on that. You actually studied professional writing, and you pursued professional writing as a career. Was it?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sure it wasn't as straightforward as that. Can you help listeners understand sort of like, how did you, become a writer?
Yeah, it was more of a meandering path than a straight line. I mean, I actually set out in college in the wildlife biology niche. That's what I wanted to do. I started up with chemistry and biology, and oh my stars, I failed miserably at it. I'm like so bad at recalling facts and regurgitating cell parts and things of that nature. And I popped out of the womb with a pen in my hand. That's always been my draw. And I just always naturally drifted there. And no matter how much I wanted to force myself in a certain direction, my heart always lied with the arts and with literature. So I did pursue that. However, there aren't really a lot of writing careers that are going to give you a steady, reliable income in the creative side of it. So I did try and force myself into, pursuing journalism and tech writing and things of that nature. And it just absolutely crushed me. I couldn't do it. I couldn't just be a regurgitator of facts. I can't. Lies are just too delicious. I always wanted to put my spin on it, and that makes me not a good fit, for that kind of profession. So I actually, despite my degree being in writing, I went into several other fields, but ultimately kind of worked myself. My husband and I, we've been married 20 years, and from the get-go, my goal was to be absolutely debt-free and mortgage-free. So we've been flipping and building houses for the past 20 years, all to get to this point where I would be 100% debt-free, built our final home with cash, so that I could pursue writing full time and retire from the quote unquote day job. So I do it full time now, but I as far as like gainful employment, I never could force myself into the right channel of it to make gainful employment. But now, you get yourself into the right financial position, and it's, the finance end of it isn't as big a deal.
So what do you think, what were some of the key takeaways if you had to do it all over again, or if you had to mentor another writer? What would you say are some of the most important decisions and sort of crossroads where you had to make a major decision that led you to becoming a successful author?
Well, I would say don't quit the day job and have a backup. I mean, writing is, it's like, it's in a way, it's kind of like a monkey on your back, because if it's truly in you, if it's truly in down to your marrow, you can't not do it. And it wakes you up in the middle of the night. It's like a screaming child. I mean, it wants your attention, and you have to keep doing it. Now I've been queried by several people that want to go into writing and maybe don't have that kind of a passion for it. And for those people, I would advise them not to, because it's not an easy field, and it's not necessarily a lucrative field. But for those that absolutely cannot not do it, I would say, I personally probably would have gone a different way with my schooling, because my degree, it's an arts degree, and it's not easy to go out and get a job with that. And so I kind of was forced into other fields that maybe I didn't even involve the arts. And I probably would have went a more traditional route whilst straddling my writing. I mean, nobody's going to walk out of the gate, for the most part, I mean, with a very small percentage, just, selling a best-selling novel, and they've got all this money, and, a Mike and Molly version of things, of just going off to a writing conference and selling your book for tens of thousands of dollars. That just is not the normal path. So I would say, if you just can't shake it and it's down deep in you, yes, you can learn a lot from creative writing classes and things of that nature, but a lot of it's just experience and continuing to write and being committed to it. So, I would say continue to massage and perfect your writing whilst doing the day job, and try and make it that way, because a lot of it, and different people learn in different ways. I have trouble absorbing things as far as like a schooling aspect of it. I'd say my experiences in the writing world and just continuing to write and trying to perfect myself have done more for me than the traditional schooling did, honestly.
Interesting. And so, at what point, do you have an agent? How do you work with publishers?
God, I wish I had an agent. I always make these jokes about, I'm very active on Twitter about how difficult agents actually are to get. And I mean, I've been at this trying to get an agent for 15 years. I ended up being published through a small indie publisher. And that publisher, one of the upper end fellows at that publishing house took off on his own, did his own house, and I went with him, and he's published some of my books. But it's a hard road, and that's part of why I say I discourage someone who's not very passionate about it, because getting an agent, getting a publisher, it feels at many times next to impossible. And there are a lot of people wanting to do it, with the boom in the self-publishing industry. I don't want to say everybody wants to write a book and be a writer, but there are a lot of them out there, and everybody wants the same thing. And it's almost like competing at American Idol or something, it's like everybody wants this one spot, and there's all these people lined up that are bending over backwards to try and get it. So it can be a very difficult road, and just being published doesn't mean you're a successful author. I remember doing a trade show, a Comic-Con, with a gal, and she had like 15 books published, and I was just aghast at how successful she was. And she said, I don't consider myself successful. These are all small books with small houses, and I really don't make any money off of. So it's, just the holy grail of being published doesn't even mean that you necessarily are bringing it in hand over fist. It's definitely, it's a difficult road, and you really, really have to want it and just have it be to the point where it won't leave you alone, and you have to do it.
Okay. And Kristine, we're going into a segment called Superpowers for Success. And the first question I want to ask you is, what does success in life mean for you?
Being happy. That absolutely is the end all be all of it. I mean, I don't care what you have. As long as you're happy with what you have, I consider you successful. I don't care, if you work in a high rise or have a mansion, or you live in a single wide trailer and work at Arby's. If you're happy, I think you're successful.
Well, that's one of those things that a lot of people don't identify that they're happy, or they have everything that they thought would make them happy, and then they're still not happy. And
precisely.
And it takes a lot of self-awareness to actually, first of all, admit that, oh my gosh, this is not this is not the life that I wanted. I need to, do something else. Or I think it's way more complicated, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I had a pretty well-paying job here a few years back, and my husband and I had got like our dream house. We lived in this beautiful, huge log house on 5 acres, gorgeous. And I had a dependable job, good job. And I thought, is this making me happy? And I thought, I want to be more serious about my writing. I don't care about this dream house that I've been pining for all these years. I don't care about these things. And we sold the house, and I quit my job, and now I do this full time. And I live in a little cottage, and it's a tiny little house, and it's just got everything I need. It doesn't, I didn't need the big lofted beams and ceilings and rooms, and it was just more to take care of. And why was I getting up and going into this job every day, that wasn't fulfilling me? And now I do this full time, and I live in this little peapot cottage, and I'm happy as a clam, so I think it's okay to say that, to go like, yeah, I want to change gears. This isn't making me happy. As long as you get to the happy, then you're successful.
Yes, that's right. I think it takes a lot for people to recognize that and then kind of admit that they need to make a shift, and that it wasn't, because people feel like, oh, I've gone this far. I'm, to change now, like, would be so hard. And really you just have to do it.
You just have to do it.
Yeah.
Why be miserable? I always think like I should have done that sooner. I'm a cautious person, but I also take risks, and I also feel like I am kind of good at pinning things down and going, okay, this isn't making me happy, I'm going to do this. So it's, but it is hard, and it has a certain stigma, I think, too, because, people, when they would come to my house before, it was like, oh, you've got this big grand house, you've got this great job, wow, you're successful. And I thought, and we had like a lot of entertaining room, and it had all this different stuff to entertain people. And I thought, I don't care about what the people that come over and visit me think. I care about what's important to me day to day and what I actually need day to day. I didn't even put a dining room in my house, because I thought, the dining table gets stuffed with stuff. I don't care if people think it's weird that I don't have a dining table. I really don't care. I don't need it. I need what I need every day, and the basics, and I'm happy, and that's good. And sometimes it's hard for people to take that step back and go, yeah, I don't really care what, I care what makes me happy, not what makes you happy and makes me look good in your eyes.
Yes. So the next question I have for you is, when did you know you were really good at what you do?
I still don't know that. And it's funny, I just was in a discussion with some people on Twitter about that the other day, and they were going on and on about what an amazing writer I am. And we started talking about self-confidence. And I think that that's, in creative types, I think maybe more pronounced than others, because you are so introspective, and a lot of us have a tendency to have a very loud inner critic. So my inner critic's always sitting up here on my shoulder going, you look like a hippo in those gray PJs, or your writing, is only as good as the people, who are reading it and think it's good, and nobody's reading it. And it's not, it's just, I don't think I'll ever think that, you're constantly, that's kind of my other takeaway as far as success goes, is someone's always going to have something better than you. Whether I'm in a $500,000 house, someone out there has $1 million house. What's the purpose in keeping up airs and putting on a show? Someone's always going to be better than you. And I guess I've kind of in writing accepted that someone will always be better than me, but they're also just going to be different than me. So all I can do is be the best me. My style may not be for everyone, and that's okay. But my inner critic does have a very loud voice sometimes.
Yeah, I love that. There's actually a great quote that I love that Claire Zammit, she says, there's no competition when the game you're playing is to be yourself.
Right. Exactly.
And, yeah. Just makes so much sense. Okay. What about, describe a personal habit that contributes to your well-being?
I walk a lot, and it's very cathartic to me. I mean, I literally walk probably 10 miles a day.
Oh, wow.
And part of me leaving my job is I get to do that. I live in this beautiful forest community. It's just trees as far as the eye can see, and I just walk through there. And it is very therapeutic to me. And I do it religiously, rain or shine, no matter what, every single day of the week. And it brings me a lot of peace.
Okay. And what superpower did you discover you had only to realize it was there all the time?
That's a hard one. I guess maybe my ability to accept my own peculiarity. I grew up kind of a very beleaguered sort of kid and was picked on. And for a long, long time, I felt like I was forever trying to fit in. And I think as I've gotten older, I've been able to accept myself. And to me, that's a very important thing. It's become very essential to my well-being as an adult, because when you're constantly trying to fit into a mold that you don't fit into, it's a torturous existence. And I don't deal with that anymore. And I never really thought I would get to that place. I was always so concerned about fitting in with the other girls. And God, I remember my hair is like black as a raven. And in school, I got called a witch because I'm very pale at the same time. And I wanted so desperately to be like the blonde girls, the cool girls, the cheerleaders, that I dumped 2 boxes of blonde dye into my hair, and it came out orange as a nectarine. It was hideous.
Oh no.
And then I was so self-conscious about it that it was like straw too, because I had to dump that stuff in there to get any kind of a color. And then I was so self-conscious, I was too self-conscious to cut it off, because I was like Samson, the hair was like my security blanket, and I just suffered. I suffered with it, and people teased me about it. And then I was too self-conscious to cut it off. And it was just like a torturous existence. And I don't deal with that anymore, because you know what? My hair is dark. I'm pale. So what? If you don't like it, move along. I don't like to create tension with anyone, and I usually don't comment, but it doesn't cut me anymore. It doesn't cut at me, because I'm just me, and I'll just be the best me I can be. And I'm not like you, and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, exactly. What advice would you give your younger self, like 10 or 15 years ago?
I guess that, in a nutshell, to be more accepting of yourself, because I think I spent a lot of years being miserable when I didn't need to be. Kind of like the same scenario we're talking about with thinking you have everything when you don't really have anything, and not just being okay with who you are and needing to live up to others' expectations. I think it's very freeing to let that go, and I wish I would have done it all the sooner. And
Kristine, do you identify as a feminist?
I wouldn't say so. I'm not super duper big into labels, and I don't, it's kind of like a political thing. Are you a Republican? Are you a Democrat? I always have views, I feel like, that kind of straddle both sides. I kind of see it as my musical taste. Someone will ask you what kind of music you like. Well, I'll listen to good blues. I'll listen to good pop. I'll listen to a good country song. I'll listen to anything, because I guess I never consider myself this or that, because I don't really close my mind off to one thing. I like to have an open mind about looking at everybody's perspective. So I don't tend to label myself as a feminist particularly, no.
Okay, and what are you reading right now? What's on your nightstand?
Lots of tweets. I've been putting together kind of an assemblage of different tweets that I do, and I'm always kind of revisiting those and trying to get story ideas. Honestly, I immerse myself mostly in my writing, because I don't know, I find a lot of writers, they'll read other writers, and then whether they're knowing they're doing it or not, they're emulating those writers. And I don't like to do that. So I kind of stick to my own stuff, to be honest. I try and perfect my stuff rather than looking at what other people are doing.
Yeah. Well, Kristine, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much.
It's been really fun talking with you. I appreciate it.
That's it for our show today. Remember, if you need support to live your Well Woman life, head over to wellwomanlife.com/Facebook to join us. Our monthly live event, Well Woman Drinks, brings women together to share our successes and challenges as women, leaders, moms, aunts, sisters, and all the other roles we carry. If you'd like to attend a Well Woman Drinks near you, or if there isn't one in your city yet and you'd like to start one, email info@wellwomanlife.com. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment and subscribe in iTunes and leave a review. This helps raise visibility, which is super helpful when it comes to producing the show every week. For feedback, comments, or just to let me know you were listening today, find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram @WellWomanLife. I'm Giovanna Rossi for The Well Woman Show. Until next time, Have a super powerful week.